I'm Rebecca Shawcross and I'm the Senior Shoe Curator here at Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, which is located pretty much in the centre of Northampton. I look after one of the world's largest collections of shoes and related items. I came to the job over 20 years ago, and I started as the assistant keeper of the boot and shoe collection, as it was known then, and there were 3 of us in the department, which is amazing because now there's only me. Now I am the senior shoe curator, so I deal with all the collections management, answering inquiries, giving talks, making the collection accessible to researchers when they visit, answering media inquiries, writing articles, giving papers at conferences. So yes, it's sort of really very busy, very varied, and I suppose that's why I really do like the job that I do and get to meet lots of interesting people as well. So the museum itself was founded in 1865, and one of the first items that was donated was actually a shoe, but not really in any sort of specific let's start collecting shoes way. It was a pair of women's slip-on shoes from India that I think somebody had probably just brought back as a souvenir of their travels, and so they donated them to the museum. So in the sort of first early years of the museum, it was a collection really of local items, not really specifically shoes. And it wasn't until 1873 that Moses Philip Manfield, big manufacturer in Northampton, suggested to the museum that we should be collecting shoes that were made in the town. And really that was a way to instill pride in all the workers. They could come into the museum, they could see the shoes that they were making, you know, and be really proud of what they were doing, and also to have a record, a long-term record of what was being manufactured. So really from 1873, shoes were started to be collected in a very specific way. There really was an emphasis on Northampton, and that's really the core of our collection, is very Northampton and county based. So we have really good examples of locally made footwear, particularly as well during the First and Second World Wars, when all the factories were taken over producing footwear for all our army and allies. And so we have a really nice collection, and they were all donated by the Boot and Shoe Association of that time, the trade association. And really over the years it's just grown and grown, so we still have a lot of donations by local manufacturers, but we also have a huge amount of items, whether shoes or shoe related, that individuals as well donate. And over all this time we probably have 16,000 shoes in the collection. In 1865, when the museum was founded, then really the shoe industry in Northampton was sort of really quite in its infancy in many ways. The first 2, what you would call proper shoe factories, were established in 1858, 1859, and that was Manfield and Isaac Campbell and Co. So by 1865, shoemakers were moving into factories at a greater rate, and obviously by the end of the 19th century the majority of manufacturing in the town was done in factories, and at the highest point by the end of the 19th century, then within just the town itself, over 300 factories making footwear, making the components for footwear. 1 in 4 people were involved in shoe manufacturing, so it really was the main industry. And then there's sort of like highs and lows. So there came a point just before the First World War when exports from America were really sort of damaging the market. As with wars, some people are winners and some people are losers, but certainly for Northampton manufacturing, then all the factories were turned over to make footwear during the First World War, and business boomed at that point. Simon Collier, one of the local firms, boasted that if they laid the amount of boots that they made, sort of end to end, heel to toe, would stretch to Edinburgh. So they boasted they made over 1 million pairs during that time. And then there was a little dip, and certainly during the Second World War, a lot of firms again made footwear for the armed forces. And then in the 1950s, I suppose the industry did start to decline. A lot of businesses were bought up by Charles Claw under the British Shoe Corporation, and so the names of various companies were still around, but actually the manufacturing of those different brands was done abroad. But there is still obviously a core of factories and companies in Northampton and the county. At one point over 300, in the town in the late 19th century, and today I think there's maybe 6 within the town, so on a much smaller scale, but actually still recognised worldwide. So when I first came to Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, we had, I had the opportunity actually of putting together what was called then the Followers of Fashion Gallery, and my colleague at the time took on the responsibility for the new shoe gallery called Life and Soul. So that was back in 2001, and then jumped forward really to 2017, when that heralded the start of our new major development project. We've expanded, so we have another building which we've connected to with a cafe, new temporary exhibition space, better facilities for schools, for events and activities. The interesting thing about the collection, obviously it's quite Northampton based, but it's also sort of national and international. It has a remit. So we have quite a good scope and depth to the collection. So we have obviously the main body of shoes, which is sort of Western fashion. And that includes children's shoes, prize and exhibition footwear, sports footwear, military, the concealed shoes, so shoes that have been deliberately hidden in buildings. We also have a world footwear collection, so shoes from around the world. We have what I would like to say is the best trainer collection in a public institution. We were lucky to have some money about 12 years ago where we were able to purchase an awful lot of trainers. So we have a really great trainer collection, and testament to that is that it's always going out on loan. We also collect really anything to do with the making and probably the selling of shoes as well. And we also have a paper archive. So that includes runs of the trade journals, lots of catalogues, photographs, lots of shoe-shaped objects. So within the shoe collection there's quite a variety, maybe 70,000 items. And we also had an opportunity over the last 4 years to create an entirely new shoe gallery in a purpose-built space. So we've been able to have input into the cases that have been used, the lighting, the sort of whole look of it. The whole project was in partnership with GSS Architecture, and specifically for the shoe gallery then we worked with Jonathan Kite of Creative Good, who came up with the designs based on sort of what we wanted in the new gallery. And of course with any project it starts off with you want everything, and then gradually over a period of time there's a certain amount of value engineering. But in the end I think we've come up with a completely different space to what it was. Feedback has been that it's light, it's contemporary. The shoes themselves are displayed to their best advantage, but also that they can tell the stories that they have to. So really the shoes do shine. We've tried to sort of theme it in a way that shows the process of making a shoe. When you come in, you're met with this idea that, how many shoe styles are there? We've plumped for 11, which is open to debate. But from those 11 styles, you can pretty much see throughout the gallery where they've been reinterpreted over many hundreds of years by manufacturers and designers and makers, and you can see where certain styles come back again. So it's getting the visitor to think about what shoe styles are and how they can be changed in many ways but also remain constant. We have a little section on the history of shoe fashion, so from our very earliest shoes, sort of Egyptian sandal sole from 300 years BC, right up to contemporary footwear that's been donated by various designers to show sort of what's happening. And then if the visitor was following the sort of route, then we look at designers and their inspiration. We had a little film commissioned where 3 designers, quite different designers, have been interviewed to tell us about their design inspiration and how they go through the whole process of designing a shoe. And that's Guy West from Jeffrey West, Chow Ha Lee and Chris Law, who at that point worked for Adidas. So it's quite a nice mix of how people go about designing a shoe.
The shoes that I've designed that once they leave you, then somebody else has to do what they do, and they come to life in whatever way the wearer wears them. They become their own things.
You then, if you logically go around the gallery, you would get to the making section, which looks at how shoes are made with an emphasis on Northampton factory making, and there's a sort of short film that gives you, the general visitor, a little highlight about how a Northampton shoe is made. Obviously it's a very long process with lots of different processes within it, filmed at Crockett and Jones. And then really we sort of then look at how shoes are sold, why we buy the shoes that we do, the sort of influence of branding and advertising. And then a big chunk of the exhibition really looks at all those reasons why we do wear shoes, expressions of identity, signs of status, wealth, an indicator to our sexuality or religion. And so it really explores that through the shoes and all the stories that the shoes have, really personal stories. So you get that feeling that it is people, you know, who are making and wearing shoes rather than just the shoes themselves. The most popular shoe in the collection, and I have to say I do have a little soft spot for it, one of 4 boots made for Jumbo the elephant in 1959. A group of Cambridge students decided that they wanted to see if it was true that Hannibal did cross the Alps with elephants. So they borrowed an elephant. Lotus, local firm, made the 4 boots, and we have one in the collection. And so it's rather just a nice example of an odd story coupled with obviously the Northampton connection as well. Other than that, then I like everything that comes in new. So I always find it the most exciting thing when you get a call from the front desk to say, you know, there's a lady here, she's got a bag of shoes. And you get very excited. Well, I get very excited and think, "Ooh, what could it be?" And then sometimes it's like, "Oh yes, you know, amazing, you know, pair of shoes with an amazing story, you know," and it's just like really wow, you know, great shoes and great addition to the collection. And other times, then you go down and it's like, and we have to say probably not as interesting, and if they want to donate it, we do say no quite a lot these days because we have lots of multiple items. So that's really, I find fascinating, the new items that come in, and sometimes you've seen them before, you know, like lasts and ice skates are very popular, but there are times when you really, you know, it's like, oh, these are really, you know, beautifully made shoes, or they have a great story. And that's a sort of exciting thing for me as well. The museum is at the heart of Northampton, you know, it's very central. You know, in essence, it's a county museum, and it has this shoe collection because of the local industry, which has been here for the last, you know, 900 years. The shoe industry has certainly shaped Northampton, from the road signs to the areas named after prominent shoe manufacturers. The very philanthropic in the past, certainly shoe companies. So, you know, there's various parks in Northampton that have been put aside because of shoemakers saying, you know, these need to be for the sort of local population. The industry has shaped the town, and I think, you know, the museum at the very heart of it We have the university as well, the leather tanning centre, the Leathercraft Museum. The strength of it really is the heritage, but also looking forward. We have now the new shoe gallery. What we'd like to do is put the shoe collection online. We're sort of in a process of honing our catalogue and database. We have images taken. The next stage will be getting a much better sort of shoe resource centre, which would, I think, be really useful for a lot of people. So all the shoes and the paper archive in particular will all be in one place, ideally in the museum or very close, and there would be enough space and opportunity so people could come and have a better research visit. They could, you know, book in a small group and have a talk and a tour. We could have volunteers working, and it would just make the collection more accessible, really. I always say, you know, it's great having this huge collection and resource. It needs people to be able to, you know, have access to it, to be able to use it to increase their knowledge, whether they're writing a book or doing a PhD or just doing a, you know, a project about shoes. Hopefully the future then, we have the collection online, we have the new shoe gallery, and then we have the resource centre before I retire, hopefully.